So tonight is FLACC. FLACC is the Festival of Latin American Contemporary Choreographers, which supports emerging and established dance artists of the Latina diaspora who are choosing to make dances of non-traditional, border-crossing, rule-breaking, cutting-edge, queer, avant-garde, contemporary, curious, experimental, abstract, sensitive, hybridized, neoclassical, or revolutionary varieties. Just that. Yeah. Latin American culture, cultural heritage, or ancestry are here defined as all countries that speak Spanish, Portuguese, or indigenous languages of the Americas, from the borderlands of the United States to the tip of South America, including the Caribbean islands, and including indigenous contemporary choreographers of North America and US-born Chicanas and Latinas, all invited into this festival. FLACC celebrates Latina heritage, inclusive identities, and artistic innovations through multimedia contemporary dance performance. We're really happy to have several of the artists, as well as the instigator, founder, artistic director, Liz Boubion, is the executive and artistic director of FLACC and of the Piñata Dance Collective based in Oakland, California. Yay, she has been a dance theater artist for over 20 years, and of course, holds an MFA in Interdisciplinary Arts from CIIS. She's also, I mean really, is a registered somatic movement therapist. She's performed in the United States, Germany, and Mexico, traversing nature, alternative gallery spaces, and the proscenium stage. She's taught as a guest artist at multiple universities, both locally and internationally, has held 6 choreographer residencies, and has also worked with local artists, of which I get to be counted as one, and Eric Coopers, Nina Little, Megan Nicely, Rowena Ritchie, Yanis Adenoy, Diana Lara, Afia Walking Tree, Amber Fields, Arissa White, T.B. Birdlove, T-Bird, and others. We're super proud of Liz. This is what, the second year of the festival. There's nothing else like it. We're really excited to have Liz and her guests, and I will hand it over to her.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much to these amazing artists for being part of this festival. Yeah, we have some amazing artists here, and then Juan Aldape is a transplant from all over, but he was born in Guanajuato, Mexico, and has lived in several places, studied in the UK and Minnesota, and now is at Cal. And he's getting his PhD in performance studies, and I love the way his mind is thinking, and I love the work he's putting out, so I wanted him to be the panel facilitator and moderator for tonight. And I'll just say a little bit.
Liz, your voice went quiet for a little bit. Can you just say the names one more time real quickly?
David Herrera, Eric Garcia, Catherine Marie Davalos, and Juan Manuel Aldape.
Thank you. And your name again?
Elizabeth Duran Boubion, or Liz, either way, or Lizzie works, like that.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Really excited to be here, and I feel a bit odd, full disclosure, because I'm wearing 2 hats. Yeah. On the one hand, I am wearing a choreographer's hat, or feet, and presenting some show, a piece in which I'm working on to deal with specific issues about undocumentation of the festival. On the other hand, I'm here as a facilitator to kind of have some of these issues kind of come up. And the reason why I kind of feel odd about it is because I actually saw the festival last year after having been transplanted to Oakland. And I saw this festival and I went, and it generated a lot of conversations that have sort of been going on for the entire year. And Liz and I have been having these conversations. So these conversations come from questions that surfaced when I saw the last festival. And we hope to engage those. So we're going to go through a series of questions and then also give some time for a question and answer towards the end, and really just trying to open it up and what type of questions the festival can come up. So as far as for our panelists, what I'll do is we'll go down and each person will open up with a response to a specific question, and then we'll do popcorn style. You can just like pop in and then we'll move on to the next question.
Do we have to use the mic?
You do not have to use the mic.
Please, because of the, yeah. We're trying to record it.
So I guess we'll start with Kathy. One of the questions I have for you is, what does it mean to have a festival for the Latino-Latina constituency? What spaces does it take up, and which spaces does it leave out? And what does that mean for you as a choreographer working in the area for some time?
It was funny when Liz called me last year about doing this work. I had been thinking about, with my colleagues, a place to put all the Latino choreographers that I work with in one concert, and I said, it's about time that we got together to do this. What does it mean? For me, the part of the question that gets me a little bit excited in a I feel like I need to defend myself kind of way is what does it erase? And that always leads me to the discussion or the dialogue around affirmative action. And you know, when we go to affirmative action, some people are not being fairly treated and that kind of thing. So I feel like I don't want to attend to that part of the question. That's for the that discussion has happened a long time ago, and we're past trying to defend. I hope we're past trying to defend affirmative action and the kinds of spaces that bring people together that something like FLACC would do. So FLACC provides a safe space for choreographers of the Latino diaspora, and I'm always excited about having someone in my audience that speaks the same language that I do. And I don't speak Spanish, so I'm not talking that. I mean the issues that I've had to deal with as a person growing up in Southern California. So if you're Mexican and you grew up in Southern California, you know that you're both invisible and you're the target of lots of racism and hatred. So we have lots of stories in my family about you know, waiting in line and not getting served and trying to buy shoes and being ignored and crazy stuff like that, that if you're not brown skinned, you probably haven't experienced so much. And then this festival brings us together to share our work, but it also provides a safe space where we don't have to defend ourselves as Latinos.
Hi. Yeah, so for me, FLACC is really special. I am Cuban American. I was born in San Jose. And as a choreographer, I've been making work for 6 years. And I went to USF and the Performing Arts Department. And up until last year, I have been trying to infiltrate the Latino community in which I belong. It's really fucking frustrating. You know, so to have Liz create this festival and to create a space for me to have work has been extremely profound. And it's also acknowledging the privilege that we have to do this work, that we have a safe space and that we are privileged in that way. It's really exciting. So to acknowledge that privilege is really awesome. Yeah, so I am queer and Latino, and a huge part of my work and consciousness is around how I either don't fit into both of those communities, or I'm either fetishized, or I am the target of homophobia, or and. So all these things that are that come with being both Latino and queer, and it wasn't until this festival last year that I started thinking about those things, because I would make cute, quirky dance theater pieces because I wanted to, and it was fun, and then it was like, wait a minute, what the fuck am I doing? I'm gonna tap into this part of me that is like necessary. It's an obligation, it feels like. So this festival creates space and sparks some major shift in my mission and my artistic voice. So yeah.
Okay, hi. Well, to answer that question, what does FLACC provide? A couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, in 2009, I actually created something very similar. And it was, I brought together a group of Latino choreographers, Paco Gomez, Jacinta Black, Yanni Lucero, with the idea to bring visibility to the fact that there's a lot of Latino choreographers in the area, yet we are constantly on the margins of this community over and over and over. Or there's, people know the one, or, they invite one of us, but not more than two of us, or so on and so forth. And so when I did that, it was a lot of fun. It was a curated event. I specifically asked for pieces that spoke about individuals' identity within the Latino diaspora and what that meant for them. And I left it pretty open after that. But after that showing, I realized, I was like, wow, this would be really great if this could happen every year. However, I have a modern dance company since 2007 that I still have to run on top of this, and it's a lot of work. So I had to pick one or the other, unfortunately. And so I'm so glad that FLACC came along. I remember hearing about it last year, and I was like, why wasn't I asked? And what is this about? I think I even emailed you, like, Eric, I was like, who's putting the show together? And then I'm not sure how we connected again, but this came to our current home season, and
Facebook, I think it was.
It had to be, maybe, yeah. And then we connected and talked about it. So for me, it's exciting to bring this again and make it the focal point, because again, I feel like it is rarely the focal point. I make work that is very unapologetically about the Latino community. I don't hide it in my work, even though I work with abstraction since I do modern dance. I still do a lot of narrative in my work. And for instance, the last piece that Liz saw called Touch, it was about families that are forced, go through forced separation when somebody gets deported. And it's usually the kids that get left behind in the States, and the parents go back to their home countries, and about what happens to the family bond and the heritage bond after that happens, when people go years without seeing each other. But I created this piece also. I had a set design where we created the border fence and duplicated that and brought that as part of our work, which is what you're going to see during FLACC, because Liz asked me to bring that section. So I don't apologize for it anymore. I realized many years ago that I wanted to make sure that the company focused on this. I went to go see a lot of work, both in the modern dance sphere and otherwise, where I just felt absent. I felt like I wasn't represented. I enjoyed the art for what it is, and I could appreciate a lot of it from an artistic viewpoint. But as a person, I always felt left out. And it hurt. It hurt to be left out and constantly be told, well, you're great, you're doing, you're at the top of your class, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And all these accolades were accumulating, but I kept asking myself, well, what's the point of having these accolades if I don't push this agenda forward? So that is my stance, and I'm super stoked to be part of FLACC. I think it's just going to get better every year, and it's just going to keep growing with visibility and hopefully more press. Because I tell you what, press is also really hard to come by, and it's hard to sell a program that is focused on the Latino community to the wider press. I have to sell every inch of my body in order to get some of my press members to come, and most of the time they don't even write about it. So, but it's a work in progress, and I think it's just going to get better in time, and hopefully FLACC will be able to provide some kind of venue or something where we can actually talk to the press directly and say, listen, we're here, you need to pay attention. Plus, we're the largest growing demographic at this point in time, so you better pay attention.
Oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna cry. This is so amazing. Just how it's touching us also personally, and I think last year we really felt that too. And these two are also like co-founders to me because they were at the first one. And Rogelio Lopez and Zari Leon are not here, but they were also here last year for the first festival, and they're going to be in the second one. And I want to speak just to what it gives and takes away, and also in response to what you all said. First of all, the privilege piece. We want to thank Mission Cultural Center for holding this. with us and for producing us. And the other 50% of kind of like paying our artists and paying for publicity and paying for all these things is like, I've put it out there, but if you want to join our team in the whole production aspects, David, he's absolutely right. Like, we create work as well, and that's a whole other baby we're holding. So we are totally open for others to join us. And maybe David will join me next year. Anyway, what is it? So it gives us a place to connect. I found out more about who we are, who are the Latino choreographers here. There was some that I didn't know, and some that I'm getting to know, and then more and more are starting to make contact. And so that's beautiful to have a place to connect. And then also to make contemporary work accessible to Latino audiences. Because right now, really, the work that represents our constituencies is folkloric and indigenous work, and it's beautiful and it's part of us. It's what has shaped us in many ways. But there's more, and and we're using some of these Western traditions that we've learned to also be part of our voices. And so in terms of that, I guess that's where the that's where my mind went, is like this conversation about heritage and being non-traditional, and where does our tradition go as we're like creating this new tradition. And I had some conversations with people from MCCLA about that. Like, it kind of went, when they came to the show last year and we said non-traditional border crossing, they were like, when you said non-traditional, it was like, I'm lost. There's nothing underneath me, right? So it's interesting to hold that and to also include it. So that's kind of where my head went. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that. What do you think?
Well, I wanted to find a lead from that comment that you made to David's work, because you talked about sort of aesthetics or processes or different methods of working that have a specific register, specific sort of tradition. You talked about modern dance. So what is the place of your Latino marker in relationship to like the way that your method of going into the studio manifests, and what are the boundaries when you say, oh, this modern method is moving on into, say, like a Latino method, or like Latino register, like a Latino register. So how do you navigate those spaces, like in the studio, and what does that look like if you have any experiences?
Okay, all right, this is a loaded question, because at first I'm like, what is a Latino method? Well, like I said, I'm very unapologetic about my work. So in process, bringing in the dancers together, I first have to be upfront that most of my dancers are actually Caucasian. And there's a whole reason behind this, because it's so hard to find Latino modern dancers. And again, those who are good are constantly nabbed by the larger companies. And this has been a thorn in my nopal for my entire existence of having a company, because I've been always scavenging, trying to find Latino performers. With that said, in the process, I always find the concept close to home. It's something usually that my family experienced. I think somebody else mentioned that that's also the way they work with. And I bring that material, talk to the dancers about what this means. Now, what I do after that is I ask the dancers to look within their own lives and see where we overlay. So you may not be Latino, but maybe you have some human experience that's very similar to what I just described. And I have them lay that over my own story, and then we start playing with that, and then we start talking about it in larger context. We'll have invited circles of people come in, or we'll go to community centers. Last year we actually flew down to UCLA to work with CIIS of UCLA, which is a fragment of the United We Dream organization. And the idea was to go meet undocumented students and hear their personal stories, because my story is only one. And if I'm trying to create work that about a larger group and a larger people, I need to hear other people's stories, and so did the dancers. So we flew down there and we talked to them, recorded their stories, came back, and then we quickly started dissecting and playing and also talking to them directly, saying, what do you want known, what do you not want known, things like that. And we found out that, you know, some people were very scared about having their names being used in the program and things like that because they're undocumented. And then after a process starts moving into performance, once we start getting closer to performance, we revisit everything we started with, and the idea is to transcend the original concept into something that's broader, something that's larger, something that's bigger, and it doesn't stay just within us. I don't want a piece that's about me per se, and I don't want a piece that's just about my dancers. I really believe in having work that's an experience, not a performance, if that makes sense. I really believe of having people come in and not see themselves as audience, but seeing as a participant in the work. I think for me personally, I believe I failed when people only see a show and they're like, oh, that was great, they did their dance, and I was here and I watched it and it was cool. I really want them to come in, experience the show, and walk out going like, recognizing either themselves or somebody they know within the work, and also questioning themselves, questioning where they stand as an individual, whatever their background may be, in regards to what they saw. I'm probably going on tangents now, so I'm not sure if I even answered your question. I don't know if that
Your
works.
responses or?
Yeah. I have obviously a similar experience as you, but I think performance is so weird, and so I love to poke at it. And so it's like, we're in a room together, you're sitting in a chair like right now and you're looking at me. This is weird. This is a weird thing. There's lights on my face and I'm performing for you. And so I love to acknowledge that. So my performances are like hyper performance. So it's like kind of like miming, but we're not clowning or anything. It's just everything is like over the top. It's almost grotesque. We're like revealing the underbelly of this really specific experience that I have. And so with my company, we're looking at the experience of the queer person of color and not just Latinos. And so we do a lot of writing, we do a lot of storytelling, and then we take these stories and personal experiences and then we add this like ridiculous layer to it. So it is either like accumulation, do the thing like 300 times, or like a lot of repetition, building, getting bigger, like over the top. How can we make this like a hyperbole, and then keep abstracting it, and then so the audience is clearly experiencing a performance. It's not like they're lost in it. They're like, holy, it's like really in their face. And I'm not so concerned about having them feel incorporated in the dance or in the show, but just kind of being like, what is happening and why am I uncomfortable? And in terms of like the process, it's a lot of storytelling that's not necessarily like words being exchanged. That's a really horrible way of saying that, but I mean that's essentially what it is. We all have our stories, and then it's like completely flipped upside down and turned into this like really not like you get like a flavor of what it is, but then it like totally departs and you're like in this other place. You're like, all right, okay. And I like that more than kind of like telling the audience like, this is what I'm feeling today. I don't know. Yeah.
I love this question. Actually, the Latino method is, I must be one of those choreographers that stole all the Latino dancers, because most of my dancers are Latino, so I apologize. And I have an amazingly beautiful company of Latinos, and there's a few white people in there, and one Asian. Almost all of them, yes. And so my favorite part about rehearsing when all the Latinos are in the room at the same time is that I don't have to have an agenda, and I can be in the moment and they don't get angry with me. Because I find that when I have to come in with, and I teach at a university, so I understand that patriarchy rules the world, and that sometimes I have to live in that world and be in a meeting in that world. So I have to come in with my agenda, and we all speak one at a time, and there's no sharing ideas all over each other, yelling and screaming at the same time and having a good time. Everybody has one turn, that kind of thing. I understand that. But when I don't have to live in that world, then I'm comfortable. And so in my rehearsal yesterday evening, we said it was going to start at 5:30, but we probably started closer to 6:30, 6:15, and nobody cared because we were going to dinner afterwards, and we had a great time. We got everything done and got the costumes fixed. You know, everything was working. And but I do know that when I have a mixed group in my rehearsal space, I can't do that. I'm not given the permission to be Latina, and I always find that really weird because this is who I am. And I work in the same way with dancers, you know, sharing stories and finding intention. But I find that if you work with Latinos, it's kind of the other way around. You have to rein them in because intention, like coming in the room with your emotions, is very Latina. And if we are getting too much, then it's usually the other way around. I have to rein them in rather than say, let's find some intention and let's explain the story. So I'm lucky in that sense that my people are speaking the same language. And so the work that I'm doing for this concert is built on being a mother, and the three of us that are dancing it are mothers. And so I didn't have to say, you know, like when your son does this, right, you know, because we all. And so I find in my having been here on the planet longer than the rest of these kids up here, that I went through that stage where I was working with an artist that I had to share what it was like to be Latina, and it's a blessing now that I don't have to train them in that thought process anymore, that I can work with Latinas, and then if I'm not doing a piece that's just about my Latina experience or our shared experience, then I have other dancers that step into that role. But my say white female dancer would respond to the Latina in my work rather than try and be the Latina in my work. And so I just build on the bodies that I have in the room. So I think that's my Latino method, and the modern method, just, you know, my tradition of making dances is built on the Western tradition, the training that I had, and that's you know, can be a source of tension also, you know, working through the oppressive ballet training and how that was for me, but because I was told I was too short, too brown, and too fat to be a dancer, so yeah.
I'll say briefly about my Piñata dance collective, which is inherently Latina sounding, and it is. You know, it's funny, it came from this very organic place. I wasn't trying so much, like, my work has always reflected my personal experience, often related to my family. I'm the youngest of 7 children. It was chaotic and crazy, and a lot happened, and I'm still processing it. And I feel like it really shaped my relationship to the world at large and my identity. And it wasn't until I left the house that I wasn't recognized as Mexican American, and then I became invisible because of my skin color, and then also carry the privilege of that. But like, I didn't start training until I was in college, which is very, very common actually among us, and because we don't have the resources often to put it into our bodies from age 3. So that's also a reflection. Like, you can really, in a way, I was talking to Zari Leon about this, about how you can kind of see kind of class privilege through dancer bodies, and that's another thing. But luckily, modern dance loves turned-in feet and things like that, so it works for me. And but piñata also is inherently a ritual, and I feel that performance is a ritual. It's a gathering of people every time, whether it's, you know, sacred or profane, and so I hold it in that ceremony for myself all the time, and I feel like nothing I do is small, even if it's a 5-minute piece, or if it's like with one person or with 10 people. It's always like a huge offering from a really deep source. So that I called my company Piñata, based off of a lot of information. I discovered that it was rooted in all these different places. It was rooted in Mesoamerica as well as China and Italy and Spain, because Marco Polo went to China and then he brought back piñatas, spaghetti, and lace, and then it turned into this Catholicized ritual of like beating away your 7 deadly sins, and then they subjugated the winter solstice ceremony that the Aztecs had to the sun god Huitzilopochtli. And Huitzi means hummingbird, which is what my grandmother used to call me. So it all came back. She called me Chuparrosa. So that's kind of how it all came about. And I feel that it holds the creative process in a good way, because it's all about impermanence and creation and destruction. And okay, thank you.
This is sort of a very exciting thing that has come up sort of last year as well, that I noticed in a lot of your works. There were 2 things: the issue of translation, the role of translation in your work. Since we're talking about either if it's a method question or linguistic issue, sort of an issue of sort of language and either translating your work. So that's one key word that kind of came up last year, and I think it's coming up for me this year, is language, but also family. We talked about sort of mothers and relationships. So I'll just maybe start with Eric, and if you can choose one of those themes, either translation or family, and just speak to how that either marks your work, and if it doesn't, I'm just curious to see if you see those issues come up in other works, and if they, so how do they come up? So either translation or family.
Well, I'll speak to translation. I, like I've said before, feel like I'm in this weird in-between. And so I don't necessarily, like in terms of like talking about this like Latino method, and I don't tap into that because it's there. I don't know how to tap into my Latino-ness because it just is. I don't know. I've grappled with this for a very long time. I'm like, I'm not really Latino because I don't know, like there's a secret part of me. I'm like, no, that's not true at all. So about a long time I was like tormented. I was like, oh my god, my family's gonna come. I have to like make sure that they get it. Or, you know, or like it's just really limiting and really frustrating. So my work started becoming really accessible to a huge variety of people, including my family, once I stopped caring about that, because I can't try to be Latino, and I'm as Latino as I'm gonna be. And it's really awesome to say that. And so once I stopped caring about that, it actually became a lot, the work became bigger than what my original intention was. And so for this piece that I'm working on, talking about desire over there, yeah, so that's my word, desire. That's all I get. That's what I choose to work with. I'm not talking about like a very specific experience. I'm just looking at that big word. And then leaving it that vague, it allows for everyone else to have their own associations with that. And so I kind of like play with this wide spectrum of like, okay, so there's this duet that I have called No Homo. And it's these 2 guys that are like hyper masculine, and then they're like fist pumping and bumping chests and then making out and then pushing each other away and like slapping each other's butts and then like high-fiving and kissing. And it's just like this weird thing. And then there's this other thing where these 2 girls are like being really hypersexual and eating an apple and moaning and then like throwing the apple and then picking it up. And like it's all these different things, whether it's Latino or not. It's translating to my mother as a Cuban woman who was born in Cuba. She's going to look at that as a Cuban woman. And then my housemate, who is this like radical queer hipster, is going to be like, yeah, that's my experience too. And then there's this, it's a whole bigger thing than what I intended it to be. So that's my interpretation of your question. Yeah. Translation.
Well, originally I also thought I wanted to speak to translation because translation is so hard. 710. It's 710.
Thank you.
But I think I'm going to speak about family, because family is super important to my work. I'm really quickly, I'll give you a brief synopsis of family. I did grow up in LA, but my parents were originally, or they were immigrants from Mexico. They eventually became citizens. But then we grew up in Hollywood, and Hollywood is such a crazy place, mixed culture, so on and so forth. But I didn't recognize my Latino-ness for a long time because it was so widely accepted. What happened to me, an experience, was that we moved to Texas. And we moved to Texas because my family wanted to buy property, and LA was too expensive. So we moved to Texas, and in moving to Texas, we ended up in a small town. And for the first time, really for the first time in my life, I felt racism to the extent that you read about in history books. Mexican was not a term of identity. Mexican was a bad word. And also, my skin was an affront to a lot of people. As soon as I would walk into certain locations, I was usually one of maybe two, if any ever, people of color that were in the area. So instantly, it was like, who is that and why is he here? I also, I learned how to work with it. I had to. You had to survive. And in learning how to work with it, I found this weird thing where people would say, well, again, I'll explain, I was class president, I was straight A student, I was in the honor system, so on and so forth. And people would say, well, David, but you're not one of them. You're more like us. And my mind instantly started going like, what the hell are you talking about? And I constantly had to say, no, actually, I am one of them.
We can be smart.
Right. My parents are actually immigrants to this country. Yes, we know that, but you guys don't act like them. And so I was there for 4 years dealing with this, and as soon as I graduated, I left. But I knew at that point, this is what I wanted to talk about, because this was not in. I didn't realize how sheltered I was in LA, even though I think you have many other stories to share about that experience. Until I moved to Texas, and then I realized, well, this is the whole bread and butter country. This is up and down the Midwest into the East Coast, that people have this mentality of skin tone. And so everything has been about that. Now, we also grew up poor, so a couple years ago I did a whole piece about the culture of poverty within the Latino community and how the outside world looks at that and fails to realize that there's a whole class system that is pushed upon the community, and nobody wants to say that, well, maybe I'm playing into that, maybe I am doing that to certain people, so on and so forth. Anyhow, so most of my work comes from the family perspective, but both of what I experienced, but also what my parents had to go through. So I'm going to give this over because we're running out of time.
Amen. Okay.
So yeah, we have a pretty short time, but we wanted to include the audience in a way to have a short dyad where you can basically share with the person next to you how culture and your heritage affects your artistry or your everyday life. And so just 2 to 3 minutes each, we'll time it. So just find a partner.
Hello.
And begin.
Kathy Davalos?
Abby?
Kathy. Catherine Marie.
You mentioned about that, sort of cultural exchange, the translation, and the Latinos in the room dancing versus when you have others.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how does that translate to travel? Have you been abroad? And
Yes.
what's that like?
Not abroad, but I have been
performing in other spaces, and it's awkward and delightful. So when I have a solo called Border Spaces and Brown Eyed Girls that I did with an all Latina audience for MALCS. Say what MALCS is, Karen.
Mujeres activas en letras y cambios Social?
Yeah.
Women in Letters and After-Social Change?
So it's a group of scholars, academics, and artists through the university system get together for a once-a-year summer institute. And when I performed for that audience, everybody got it. They were singing the songs in Spanish. They were swaying in the seats. They were laughing at every single little Latina joke, Chicana joke that I had in the piece. And they were movement metaphor. Like I wasn't speaking. It was movement metaphor, and they got it. And I have another piece called Dobles that I performed with Rogelio Lopez. When I was a young kid, I made it when I was 30. I performed it with another Mexican man, Adam. We performed it in LA, we performed it in Washington, D.C. And when we got to Washington, D.C., they were laughing at parts, and I thought, that's not funny. What are they laughing at? I still don't know, but it was a predominantly white audience, and they thought something was funny that we were doing, and I hadn't intended it to be funny. And the Mexican, when I performed it in New Mexico, they weren't laughing at that one spot in this one section. So I don't know, it was funny to them and not to me. We didn't care. Like I realized at that moment, well, I'm speaking to them in a different way, and so that's usually what happens when I'm out of my place. So in San Francisco, mostly I have a mixed audience, and we're pretty much all together, getting it. And then when I leave here, then I'm always up for a surprise. But that one Mox audience was in Minnesota with women from all over the country. Am I right? Some international too. Mm-hmm. And that was the most magical performance I've ever had. And I'm guessing that's what it's like to perform at the ballet, like the Nutcracker. I'm thinking that that audience there is all getting it, except for me. So.
Yeah. You go next.
Okay. On a similar note, you're telling. I was specifically intrigued by your telling of how when you are with a Latina group that you can be on your own schedule, and that when you are with Caucasians, I assume you're meaning Caucasians, or?
Yes, I have a mixed race company, but mostly Latino, and then there's two girls who identify as white, one identifies as queer, so a third she does as an other.
Okay. Yeah. How that is different when you're with them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just for me, and I feel this way a lot around conversations of race and privilege, of just how delicate that is,
mm-hmm.
as someone who identifies as a Caucasian, that there is perhaps this system of oppression that we don't even realize is happening, or am I by just default of my skin color somehow supporting this oppression that I don't necessarily consciously participate in. And just for me that is just such a dynamic conversation, and I want so much to participate in it consciously. And just, I would be curious to know what your feedback is for how to do that. And
well, I teach at St. Mary's College. I also teach multicultural thought and American diversity. And so we just have the dialogue about unlearning racism and identifying power and privilege. And so when you bring it up, then we can have the dialogue.
Right.
So I'm not intentionally, when I walk into that rehearsal with my mixed company, I know the expectation of the group in a different way. So I set out, okay, in rehearsal we're going to do this, this, and this. Last night when we were in rehearsal, or maybe even all of our rehearsals, I don't know if I ever set any intention, have I? We get together, and I think that's a couple of times, I would like to learn the whole piece tonight, But Roberta has been dancing with me for
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years. So she probably reads my mind. So there's that, when you have that long relationship with someone, so I don't have to worry about it in that sense as well. Rosanna and Rogelio have been dancing with us less long, but they come in with no expectations about how I should behave or how they should behave.
So it's more than just, it's a relationship
Yeah.
that you hold with the people as opposed to just their race.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then when we're talking about American diversity, the hard piece in the classroom and the dialogue that you bring up is how to move in those circles without guilt.
Yeah.
How to just keep identifying what you just did. You know, if I walk in, if I walked into the room expecting something of the people in front of me, then I have to understand that place that I'm bringing and recognize my own privilege. I mean, in my family, our joke is that we are Mexican American princesses, and that's when that question about family or translation. I often feel like I have to, in the same relationship that David has to being an educated Mexican, what that means in the world to even our own family sometimes. So, yeah.
Thank you.
She had her hand up.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if in your work, in your rehearsal process, in your audience, if you've had experience with any of the frictions that come up in the different Latino communities.
Oh yeah.
And if you can talk to that a little bit, because I know my family comes from Guatemala, and just thinking about just between the Guatemaltecos and Mexico, and then what that means here is a whole body, and then thinking about the Caribbean, and so if you could share a little bit about that.
I haven't had anyone come up to me other than Mexicans, and most of the time it's how I'm not being traditional. So the very first time I did a piece at Cal State Long Beach with mariachi music and modern dance, the Latino club on campus, the president, he came up to me and he said, "How dare you do that? And they're not even wearing shoes." And he was furious, and I turned around and laughed. I'm like, he's serious, and I have to like listen to this, you know. But I haven't had any negative dialogue with other Latinos about where we are and what we're saying. The work I've been doing mainly has dealt with immigration and family, and so we share a lot of that dialogue.
Well, just because in the immigration story you have then, like, it's so different to be an immigrant from Cuba or to be from Guatemala, to be from northern Mexico or southern Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is.
Recently or a long time ago.
Right, right, right.
I just want to
Give
just add. No. I'm very much sort of provoked by the question that you said, because that's one of the ongoing conversations that we started right before this. We men talked about. One of the questions that I had asked was sort of what hegemonic powers rise up when we mark our bodies with the term Latino, and what specific relationships of power does it hold to specific Latino dimensions and hierarchies that exist within U.S. racial politics, and what happens when a choreographer from Argentina comes here and gets, becomes part of the festival, and sort of what racial operations get marked on their body just by participating within the sort of this imaginary in the U.S., and does it allow for those complexities that very much exist outside? And I'm an undocumented Mexican who grew up in Utah. Of all the places I came here, and I find that the registers of looking at Latinidad in California are very different than looking at the registers of looking at Latinidad in Utah as a Mexican there. And those are the type of questions that I think really started to surface in terms of how do our methods, we talked about, do we use modern dance, contemporary dance, jazz dance, all of these different methods interact with the markers that get attached to us. And for the sake of honoring our time, these are the type of questions that we can take on to the next. So when you go next week to the festival and you're there, ask yourself these questions. What are these bodies saying that don't enter the language of of our conversation? And then also follow up with any conversations that you might have on Facebook or Twitter, and let's continue these conversations outside after sort of this formal part, and we go into the Latino method part. So we want to maybe go ahead and take the time to honor everyone here, and we'll continue this conversation after we're done with this panel part of the session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carolyn and Anne. Thank you so much. What were you going to?
Can I have a last word?
Oh,
yeah. Mind?
Are we going to do
If you, I mean, people can have that choice if you want.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I don't know, thank you so much. I do feel like whenever there's any kind of talk, but when there's, 5 really awesome, brilliant, and talented people on stage, it's just like an offering of so much more to come. So I hope you come back, and I hope everybody goes to the festival and gets to see what they're talking about. I also want to, if you don't mind me taking up a little space, to say that first question, and to turn it around to the first question was about why a Latino festival, right? And what does it do? And I just want to say, as someone who's created a festival for a marginalized community many years ago, calling forth the identity and seeing who comes and seeing the kind of how you frame something is a whole other political and cultural statement, and the work that gets done inside that frame changes I believe according to how you frame it. And so I think that's by way of saying this is so exciting and so wonderful that you're doing it to create that frame. Allows, I hope and imagine and would love to hear from you also, new kinds of aesthetics and choreographies and communities to sort of blossom. And so I really hope that this keeps going and that it keeps building, and that whatever that is, that aesthetic, that you all are pioneering, starts to get more articulated and seen and all of that. So that's just my long-winded way of saying thank you so much for both doing it and for coming here.
And just to respond to that, I just want it to be extremely open so that there's not a defined aesthetic, because we all have such completely different body mythologies and life experiences and identities and fluid, and mixed identities and many. So that was my whole thing, and I hope that whoever joins me in this effort is also on that, just with the mission statement to just support Latinos, and that's it. You don't have to make it about anything. It has to be about, what is good work. That's it. That's the criteria. But yeah, I hear that this is actually helping me grow as an artist, and it's helping all of us decide, oh, we can enter this space now because it's just, there's space for it, and there's a conversation. So yeah. Okay, so do you want to flock with us? We'll do 15 seconds each. We're going to give you a movement, and you're going to do it too, because this is sort of our common language. Some of us speak Espanol, some of us don't. And David has to go. Give us one movement, say goodbye. Okay.
We're moving. Okay. One movement to say goodbye?
Yeah. Anything.
Anything can go, okay.
From whatever you're feeling right now.
All right, so that.
Yeah. All right, next person. Eric?
Sure. This is a little thing from my piece. You just do a roll. That's all. Roll.
You follow Kathy in the back.
Oh. What do you need?
Choreograph.
Laura. Oh yeah.
And I'll be quick.
Something from my, I don't have anything, but how about just